Ladies and gentlemen, chess is one of the most complex, fascinating, and ever-evolving games ever created in history. But if you just recently got into this game in 2020, 2021, 2022 because of the chess boom, you might not be so familiar with some of our more crazy historical events and dramatic ones. Well, in this video, I'm sharing with you the match played in 1992 between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky, the unofficial World Chess Championship match, but 20 years later, because they actually played one in 1972. Video is split into a few parts. Right now, I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory, 2 or 3 minutes, then we're going to jump into some of the games of the match, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you all about the aftermath, like Bobby having a warrant for his arrest out and never returning to the United States again. It's a completely insane story. So, in 1972, Bobby defeated Boris Spassky and became the champion of the world. He raised the prize fund of chess, he put chess on an international map, and people started respecting the game and the players a little bit more. But in 1975, he was set to play a match against Anatoly Karpov, who was kind of like the Soviet prodigy. That never materialized because Bobby wanted certain conditions. He wanted first to 10 wins, no draws, no questions asked. And he wanted other formats changed to determine the world champion. And his proposals were declined by committees. It was close, it was voted upon, but it was declined, and he never played chess again. He stepped away from the world championship title in 1975, which is insane, all right? We've seen it happen today, but he didn't play another competitive chess game. He sort of drifted, went along, lived his life, until 1992, when a millionaire, a businessman from Yugoslavia named Yezdimir Vasilevich offered to put up a $5 million prize fund to have Bobby play Boris Spassky once again. But Garry Kasparov was the official world champion in 1992, so it was really weird. Not to mention, Yugoslavia, Serbia, and that whole kind of like that region of the world, there was international sanctions imposed upon them by the UN, which obviously includes the United States of America. So Bobby was not allowed to take on that opportunity, but he did. And he introduced a couple of important formats. First to 10 wins was approved. He also introduced a clock which added time every time you made a move. Bobby Fischer invented increment. Did you know that? That's crazy to me, right? So a few of his conditions were met, and the match began. It was played in 2 places. Sveti Stefan, which was an island off the coast of Montenegro, and then after 5 games were won by one side, it moved to Belgrade. And on that note, I'm going to jump into the games. I'm going to show you some of these games, because think about the greatest player of that entire era and up until that point of all time, not playing chess for literally 2 decades, showing up and playing for a world championship. Now, of course, this is weird because, like, there's 2 of them, right? There's an international one and this one. Let's go through some of these games. So the very first game that I have for you, the Return of the King, if you will, begins with a Ruy Lopez. And I mean, I don't know how Bobby could have possibly kept up with developing theory over 20 years. This system of the Ruy Lopez where black undevelops this knight back to b8, preparing knight bd7, as well as the move c5, is known as the Breyer variation, and Spassky and many players from the Soviet Union were fans of it. Black develops like this, has a rock-solid formation. White wants to rotate this knight over to g3, and Bobby plays this provocative bishop move, getting his bishop kicked out, but now he will be able to target the potential, pawn on h6. Now, as I'm going through these moves, think about something completely nuts. This position, even at that time, had been reached a multitude of times prior. Like, the first 12 to 15 moves of this game had been played already, thousands of times. But Boris Spassky plays a move in this position. Rather than taking en passant, and if you're watching this somehow because it got recommended to you, you don't know what this move is, you got to learn a little bit more about chess. Promise, this is a very nifty rule, en passant. That is the main move in this position. Spassky plays a move no one's ever played before. Now, one of 2 things occurs when you play a move no one's ever played before. You either know everything you're doing, or you are about to get yourself in a really difficult position. He plays this very passive move. He doesn't open up the queen side like take, and knight c5, which had been played up until that point. And Bobby begins just sort of improving his position on all 3 sides, right? You're going to notice Bobby just going over the A file, threatening to open it up, just applying. Look at this triple stack on the A file from Bobby, ready to take on b5. But he's not just yet, rotating the pieces over, and Spassky begins fighting back. He sacrifices a piece for 2 pawns because once you have this position, like let's say, you know, king to g8 again. I mean, at some moment, like this capture will happen and the position will open up. White will run out of improving moves and at some point crack this open and just go straight down that line of the board. And so Spassky wanted to not sit around. He wanted to get 2 pawns for the pieces, for the piece sacrifice, but unfortunately, Bobby just too sharp. Gets in on the A file, and the pressure's anything but off. And look at this amazing move. Just opening up his own king, but the idea is to rip open the position in front of the black king. At the end of the day, White has more material, and he's able to sacrifice back to then go knight h4, and the threat here, knight on e4, knight is coming into g6, or bishop coming into g6, and the king is just stranded. Center of the board. Here comes knight f5, a nice move. Queen f4, the king is running, and Bobby delivers a swift execution, if you will, of transitioning the game into a totally winning endgame, up a lot of material, combined with a very powerful attack on the king, and he ends the game threatening a discovered check, which would win the queen, and black simply completely defenseless here against the attack. Return of the king. He hasn't played in 20 years in a classical game of chess, and he beats Boris Spassky. Now, granted, Boris Spassky at the time was like number 96, number 97. He was like top 100 in the world. He wasn't a top 20 player. You could argue that if Bobby had played a top 20 player, it would have been different. Having said that, this was a match literally sponsored by a gentleman from Yugoslavia who, you know, had $5 million to put up. He actually later was found guilty of running a Ponzi scheme and actually spent time in jail. So a businessman putting up $5 million, you know what I mean? You're not gonna get like a fully bulletproof format here. But yes, Bobby returns, wins a very nice game. Now, you would think that this video is all about, you know, Bobby running over Spassky like it was nothing. Not necessarily. You're gonna notice that in this game, it's a lot of the same moves that you saw in the last game. A lot of the same moves, but a slight difference. The slight difference being that after all this, we have pawn takes d4. We don't just have, you know, c5 and then a4. Like, I think that game went like this, and then it was like a4, c5, d5, c4, something like this. In this game, Spassky does it this way, where he trades in the center first, and then it gets this position. And you're going to notice here that Bobby plays a bunch of normal moves, but then sort of starts hesitating. He plays rook c1, and then he plays rook b1. Okay, trying to fend off the black queen. Then he kind of plays knight e2, and then he sacrifices his a-pawn here, looking to trade off the bishop and start some sort of attack, but Spassky strikes back with f5, a nice move. And the point is that white can't take on f5, because he's going to lose this pawn. And yeah, I mean, Bobby playing with fire here, leaving that pawn on the a-file. That pawn could come back to hurt, right? And Spassky, I mean, he takes on e4, and then, oh, look at this move, g5. Bobby trying to sacrifice material here a little bit to start some sort of very powerful attack. All his pieces are in the game, but his defenses are very rapidly being depleted. So now he's down 3 pawns. Everything is hanging, and this pawn might still get through. He tries to bludgeon his way in. This is very, very much like Bobby style. He takes on b7, but the white pieces are falling one by one. And at the end of the day, that pawn is going to be a problem. He invited that problem onto himself when he sacrificed it early on, and that pawn became a queen. And in trying to defend himself, he's simply going to run out of pieces. He's Spassky just in time here, coming back with the queen. He now just has to defend himself. He does. Everything is protected. And a few moves later, after just adding a few more layers of defense, it was Bobby Fischer resigning to Boris Spassky. And Spassky leveled the match. Not only did he level the match, he actually went on to take a lead in the match. He was up 2-1 in win count very early. But Bobby wasn't going to let that happen. All right, Bobby, after going down 2-1, proceeded to win 3 games in a row at some moment, like right after that, to be up 4-2. The last game of which was punctuated with just a giant exclamation mark. I mean, just an absolutely savage exclamation mark. My throat's been hurting. Please excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of my ginger lemon tea here. ASMR chess content. This game, Bobby plays something different. He plays the Exchange Spanish. Now, the Exchange Spanish is not something that you play to gain some sort of, huge advantage. But you will notice that if you're playing the Ruy Lopez, you're generally going here. But the Exchange Spanish can be very tricky. And there are a few moves here for black. Bishop d6, f6, queen f6. There's actually many, many lines. Believe it or not, this is actually one of the most resilient moves. Because the move knight takes e5, hoping for some sort of crazy attack, just doesn't do anything. The king is completely safe here. If queen f5 check, the king, believe it or not, walks out to d6, and you just don't have enough attack. So instead of that, Bobby plays this. And we go into an endgame, right? Well, not endgame is a bit of a strong word, but queenless middle game. And I think Bobby's idea here was like, you know what? Maybe Spassky has not reviewed some of his exchanged Spanish lines. I'm gonna punish him. So we have bishop g4, f3, bishop e6 back, trying to induce a little bit of a weakness. Bobby develops everything, b6, and position is stable. White plays the move a4. The idea of a4 is to soften up the structure with a5, right? That's what you want. So black might not want to play this move because white will go knight b5 and just plant the knight there and then try to apply pressure throughout the game on this bishop. But that's probably the best thing to do. It's a very tough decision here. Black can also go like this, but then the knight will kind of live on d5 forever. It's going to be very tough to get rid of. So Spassky has a difficult decision. Like, what is he going to do here? He decides that he doesn't believe Bobby, and he's going to play castles and allow the move a5. Now, that is a very bold decision. Because Fischer is starting an attack on Spassky here before Spassky can get castled. If you add even one move, like knight e7, this just loses all of its power because the knight is getting to c6 in time and the pieces are all connected. But understanding time in chess is everything. And no, I don't mean looking at your clock and going, I have 4 minutes remaining for this game. I mean understanding the timeliness of the opponent's defensive resources. And after king b7, Bobby Fischer finds an amazing move because he's an amazing chess player. He finds e5. e5 has a little trick to it. If bishop takes, you're going to get rook takes rook, but this is a kind of a world championship level match. Nobody's going to blunder that. But the real idea of this move is a clearance sacrifice. You sacrifice your pawn to get this knight to e4, from where you will apply pressure here, here, and you're about to see what else. If f takes e5, you have ab, removing the defender of the bishop, and then various knight e4 stuff. And after e5, bishop e7, it went from bad to worse, where in this position, for like the third or fourth time, Spassky had the opportunity to just take a piece off the board that is contributing to the white attack. Spassky saw that there was a sacrifice here, knight c5, which would have won 2 pawns and gotten the bishop back, and he played king c6. And king c6 does in fact prevent knight takes c5, because it's no longer a check, except for the fact that it doesn't defend knight c5 at all. And it took Fischer just 19 moves in this game to get a completely winning position at elite level. And the point is that after this, white just goes check. And if you try to guard your bishop, you're going to get bullied and I'm going to take it from you. And so for that reason, Spassky went here. But when the dust settled, he was not just down a pawn. His king was getting savaged. I mean, if king b5, it's checkmate in 3. You can pause here and try to find it. It's knight d6, king b4, and a mating net. And now c3 mate is game over. All the black pieces on the back rank. What a position, right? King is stuck defending on his own. All right? So instead of that, we got here, and Spassky just resigned. And this was the 3rd win in a row for Bobby, who went up 4-2. He won a 5th game, of course, and then they returned to Belgrade, which was the capital of Serbia, which was and is the capital of Serbia, to play out the remaining match. Yeah, Bobby was not going to be down 2-1 for long. He picked things up real quick. Now, there was other games. Of course, Bobby also played black in the match, and he loved a good old-fashioned King's Indian defense. He was basically the pioneer of this opening. He added so much to the theory of it, and then Kasparov took it from him and ran with it as well as many, many good players. And the craziest thing is in 1992, when this match was played, Kasparov was world champ. He had beaten Karpov multiple times already to gain that experience, and he was frequently competing at the highest level. Spassky played a same-ish, this f3 setup, and this was just an insane game. Normally in the King's Indian, black is attacking white, but you are about to see what Spassky does in this game. It was just unbelievable. He locked the center, and when Fischer started firing f5 at him, Spassky just waited. He tried to instigate a little bit on the queen side. He kept a very solid king side position, and it was Fischer who locked the position up with c5, seemingly thinking that, okay, I mean, I might not be able to break through, but neither will he. But give it just a few more moves, and it was Boris Spassky launching the initiative right back at Fischer. Any Harry Potter fans? Avada Kedavra? Expelliarmus? I never understood, like, as a kid, how one reflected the other. I thought one was a disarming spell. But as I learned, when you reflect the killing spell right back, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of like, it's sort of what's happening here. All right, so straight back at him. And this is bad news, because in the King's Indian, if you play against somebody, what is supposed to be played onto you, you're going to win, okay? And Spassky in this game never took his foot off the gas. Fischer tried to create a blockade. Look at this roaring initiative down the H-file. 19 points of material barreling down toward you. Remember that first game when Fischer set up the triple stack on the A-file? This is a totally different story. In game number 1, when Bobby Fischer set up the triple A-file attack like this, there was pieces at the end that were ready to be traded. Folks, there is a king here. All right? That king is relaxing on a lounge chair. And Spassky is never letting up. He improves the position to the maximum capability. Fischer ends up having to lose a knight, because if he goes here, it's just g6. Look at this position. Have you ever seen a position this cramped? It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. So he has to sacrifice a piece, and it just goes from bad to worse. All right, rook h4, bishop f3, and count the material. One guy has 3 pieces. And some of you could even win this position with white against Bobby Fischer. I mean, no disrespect to Fischer. There's just not a whole lot you can do. Bishop knight, 2 bishops versus, and Fischer gets down all the way here, but white is too solid. Here comes the king. The king is ready to capture all of the important pawns. Now, it's never too late to blunder. You could have taken here, but then there would have been like some discover check maybe. Yeah, he just goes here and knight f5, and that's it. So Boris Spassky was not just going to sit there and get steamrolled. I mean, he fought back against Fischer. He won some really nice games in King's Indians. Another main weapon that Fischer used with black was the kind of delayed move order of the King's Indian. So he did play a King's Indian, but he kind of created a Benoni structure, if you will, with c5, d5. So he played a King's Indian in this style as well. You'll notice here that Spassky doesn't get his same-ish. He doesn't get f3, bishop d3, everything that he had in the last game. And instead of that, look at this, knight takes e4. Uncorking pure savagery here with bishop takes e4, bishop takes c3. If you count the material, white is a piece up. Now, I think the line here after bishop e4 is something like is nothing short of spectacular. Basically, there's like all sorts of ways you can fight back, but you leave too many pieces hanging. Yeah, there's this completely ridiculous line where black is a piece down and only the queen is out, and white is not even better. So you have rook c1 kicking out the queen, and now you have this amazing h4. Now you would think fe4, right? No, just g4. What? Because of this, now this. How is this possible? I mean, how is this theory back then? This looks completely ludicrous. Knight e2 takes, and now black is no longer down a piece. He's even a pawn up. Fischer's openings were just unreal. Completely unreal. He's threatening mate. He's getting the knight out to e5. He's no longer up a pawn. But look at this position. Everything is bulletproof. His queen side is rock solid. And Bobby's just going to start raining haymakers down on the F and the G files. And so Spassky tries to fight back. Look at this incredible move, knight takes c4. Desperado, right? Because this can be taken, but rook g3 is coming. So the knight jumps out of the way. Pieces fall off the board. And Spassky tries to do something on the queen side here with queen b3. Just one simple pawn move. And you got all this barreling down toward you. This is just bad news. And Fischer ends the game swiftly with e5. The final kiss of death. If en passant is played, bishop slides back to c6, and that's it. You're just going to remove the bishop from the existence of the position. The craziest thing about this game is Spassky played it without a rook. Fischer immobilized the white pieces to such an extent the guy played without a rook. We're talking about a world champion at some moment, right? It's crazy what Fischer did to people. It's like Muhammad Ali. All right, I mean, it's like Mike Tyson of the heavyweights. I mean, he just made people afraid of like moving their pieces. Is sort of how it felt. And the 30th and final game of this match, they played 30 games. Remember, it was first to 10 wins, so the draws did not count, was a vintage, same-ish King's Indian defense by Bobby. Spassky tried to play in a similar way with h4 and all the other stuff. And this time, Fischer did not lock the position with e5 and try to play for f5. He did things a little bit differently. He tried to fight only on the queen side. You will notice Spassky is playing in the same way, but the difference is that the center here is not as locked, right? It's not as closed. And so after g4, hg, and Spassky trying to go for this attack, blowing Fischer off the board, this is what Fischer did to people. Spassky is once again trying to kind of fight back here and fight on Fischer's terms, but Fischer's too fast here. The reason that attack worked the very first time you saw it is because the center was locked. Kingside attacks work when the position is locked. You'll remember, if we go back to this game, when white started breaking through, look at the center. Deadlocked. Impossible for black to breathe here. But in this position, the center's wide open. And that allows counterplay, right? That allows pieces to snipe each other from all over the place. And when Spassky decided to sacrifice a piece here, to go for a devastating attack and open his G file, Fischer called the bluff immediately. He said, give me that knight, all right? Give me that knight as well. I'm removing your attackers from the board. And you think you're just going to sit there and get like rook g1 and bishop d4 and all this stuff? Come give me this pawn. Look at how savage that move is. Opening up his own king. Waving the red flag. Come and get me. Come and get me. Let's go. Come and get me. King f1. That's not going to get the job done because if rook g1 check, just king h7. And actually, it's black fighting back. So Spassky just a little bit too desperate here, sacrificing the house, you know? But just f6, and there's just not enough. And it's actually black who is creating the substantial threats on the position. Spassky plays a few more moves, but it's just not enough. The king defends, and now it is the rook arriving on the h-file, queen f5, all these different moves to deflect the queen from the defense of the white position. And Spassky resigned game 30, and it was Fischer winning 17.5 to 12.5, aka 10 wins to 5. And after this, he declared himself the undefeated champion of the world. Now, what happened after this match? Well, Bobby got a lot of prize money, but both he and Spassky never really played competitively ever again. The story goes that Fischer was unable to return to the United States. A warrant was out for his arrest, and his timeline sort of goes, first he lived in Budapest, in Hungary. In fact, he visited the Polgar sisters' household when they were a lot younger. If you don't know the Polgar sisters, you should definitely look up that story. It's an incredible story of three very, very talented and hardworking young girls turned just unbelievable chess prodigies. So Fischer actually visited them at home. He trained with them. You know, he tried to dabble with Fischer Random, the chess 960 format, which he also invented. And then he moved around. I mean, he lived a little bit in the Philippines, where he lived with Eugenio Torre, who helped prepare him for the 1992 match against Spassky. And I think ultimately what ended up happening was when he was traveling Japan to the Philippines, he was arrested because he had a revoked U.S. passport. He spent time in jail and ultimately wrote to the government of Reykjavik, the government of Iceland, to give him an opportunity to live there kind of as a refugee, because he played the match there in 1972, and that's where he spent the rest of his years. When he passed away he passed away at the age of 64 in 2008. Crazy. Just an absolutely insane story from one of the most decorated and accomplished chess players of all time. We're sort of discovering in 2022 that some of his views were definitely, and some of the things that he said were definitely not fully acceptable by those standards and definitely by modern standards. And it's weird, you know, it's weird that one of the players that's constantly talked about in the GOAT debate does have a little bit of this kind of absurd past that you can, you know, dive into. But maybe that's just kind of the toll that chess has. And world champions since then have more or less remained sane, more or less remained, for now, in relatively decent mental shape. But the story of Bobby Fischer is kind of an insane one. And when I went digging into this 1992 match, I didn't know a whole lot about it, which means that you probably didn't know a whole lot about it either. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you enjoyed this recap of this insane match. If there's any other historical chess content you'd like me to cover, Do let me know in the comments. And aside from that, I will see you in my next video. Get out of here.